Hi, Hasti. Thank you so much for joining me on my blog today.
Thanks for having me. This is so fun to do.
Could you tell the listeners and the readers a little bit about yourself and what it is you do?
Yeah, for sure. So, my name is Hasti. I'm a wedding planner, owner, and happy owner, and lead planner at La Vista Events. I've owned my business since 2014. My background is actually corporate HR. So, I went to business school, I studied HR, I had this amazing career that was growing. And I don't know if I can say this now, but I'm going to say it because it's been enough years. I hated it. There was really nothing that could get me out of that funk that I was in the few years that I was working in corporate HR. I felt like I was missing something and I couldn't figure it out. I was bouncing around in different roles and I just needed a little bit more. And I really wanted that autonomy, I wanted that creativity, and I wanted more people interaction, and I also wanted to be my own boss. And I just jumped into it. So I didn't really have any formal training in weddings or events. Growing up, I was that student in high school, in student council, throwing all the school dances. In university, even though I went to business school, I was that person who, my grades were decent, and I was in business school, so I had to get good enough grades to get in. But I have to say, my focus was not on the grades. I was more fascinated about, getting involved and having the extracurricular activities. And primarily that was event planning for me. So I was on different committees and social committees and super active that way. And naturally, what happened is in 2014, when I got married, I'm one of those stories as well. So I got married and I was like, you know what, this is fun. We had a really talented wedding planner and she really inspired me. I was able to have conversations with her about what she enjoyed, and what I was fascinated is that she was able to do this on her own. She didn't have to work for anyone else. She started her own business and it was just incredible. So she inspired me to give up my job and get the training and get the certification. And that's it. I really just jumped into it. And here we are. What year is it? 2021 now?
2021. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It is like a really great profession. And yeah, you get to be your own boss and you get to be creative. It's a lot better than the corporate world.
It is. And it took me a few years to be able to say that out loud, but it is better. I mean, I feel happier. I feel a little bit more relieved. Um, with that said, though, I've been careful because there is that dangerous part of you leave your 9 to 5, your 40-hour work week, and all of a sudden you're working crazy hours. And instead of working 9 to 5, you're working 11 to 11, or you're working till 3 a.m. And you have to be careful. And that's taken me a few years to find that workout life balance. And not that I've actually found it, but I'm closer.
For sure. Yeah. So Hasti, you're entering the education space, right? You're starting to teach people, other aspiring planners, how they can become planners and do what you do. And so in today's interview, I wanted to ask you all about how it is you handle a consultation and how that whole process works for you. So my first question is, what's the first thing you do when a couple reaches out to you?
Well, other than my happy dance and just, overly excitement feeling and probably sharing it with the world, I'm an oversharer. I'm that person on social media who will screenshot and share everything because I think as business owners, we should celebrate everything. When I get inquiries, one, aside from celebrating, two is getting back to them as soon as I can within reason. I don't want to be too overly excited and respond within minutes, but I do want to make sure that I'm responding to them within a reasonable amount of time to show that I am excited, I am eager to support them, and then really just take it from there. But there's definitely a process when it comes to consultations, and I think there's definitely a science to how it all works, and a psychology, I think, behind it too.
Oh, very interesting. Okay, so when a couple reaches out, so you said the first thing you want to do is you want to get back in contact with them as soon as possible. What are some things that vendors can do to avoid getting ghosted? Having people just not responding to them after they've reached out.
Totally. So I think a lot of this, Victor, comes down to how we're responding back. And are we responding back with a basic copy and paste response that's going to be obvious that it's just another inquiry. We don't really care either way. We just want to make sure we're responding back. So to go back to the topic about responding back ASAP, I think you also don't want to be over eager and literally responding ASAP either, because you don't want to make it seem like you're desperate. So I think you have to play with it a little bit to find the right timing of when you respond back. And then to follow up with how you respond back is, what are you saying in your response back? So getting ghosted, it happens to all of us, to the best of us, and to all of us. It doesn't matter if you're new or experienced. Sometimes that's just the process. And let's be honest, I'm sure we've ghosted our share of people over our lifetime as well, whether it's been, whatever it's been in our lives. So it's not to say that it's anything personal, but when you are responding back, I think the biggest thing that you can do is actually take the time that, yes, you probably have some parts of your response back that are templated, but what is it that you can add to your response to make it personalized? So this also goes in turn with, what is it that we're asking for when they're inquiring? So I don't know about you, but I do get messages sometimes on Instagram with people asking about availability, or I'd love to learn more, or very rarely, because no one picks up the phone anymore, I might get a phone call. So I always try to direct everyone back to my website. And I think the website contact form is part of the inquiry and the consultation process, because that's how you can really weed out who's a good fit for you if they're taking the time to fill out your form. And my form asks a lot of questions, not like an abnormal amount, but it actually asks the right questions. And I think that's really important, so that when you're able to respond back to them, you can pick up on what they said in their responses to you when they filled out the questionnaire. And then you can respond to that. So whether it's the guest count, or what they're really excited for, or whether it's the venue they're getting married at, you can now use that in your response back and be able to really sell yourself even more, because yes, you know what? I'm actually a preferred vendor at that venue. That's so great that you're getting married there. Or, ooh, we just did a wedding there last week. Here's a recent clip that I've shared on my Instagram stories, and you hyperlink or whatnot. So I think you can really personalize that initial response back.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because like what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that it's important to reach out with a personalized response, so that the couple will feel like, okay, so this planner is, or this vendor is reaching out to me personally. This isn't a copy and paste response. So they've taken that time. I should take the time to respond back to them. And then also directing that inquiry to your website, so they can give you more information about the inquiry, so that you can better craft your response to be even more personal and to make yourself seem like an even better fit.
Totally. And here's the thing, if people take the time to go through your website and fill out a form, and not to say that the inquiry form has to be long and lengthy, but I think if it's well done and you have appropriate questions on there, if the client to be cares enough, then they're going to take the time to actually fill out the answers. And then you can also determine the response that you're going to give them back based on what they've put into the contact form. When someone gives me one-liner answers, or just NA, not applicable, not applicable, and they just quickly go through it, then I can just tell they're just price hunting right now and they don't get it. But when they write me paragraphs of how excited they are, or how they had attended this one wedding, and this is what they remember of me as a planner at that wedding, and here's what they want for their wedding. Well, naturally, you bet I'm going to be their pen pal, and I'm going to be writing them the sweetest message back, because now their energy is contagious, and I'm going to be just so genuinely excited to write back to them. But here's the thing though, we're talking about consultations, and we're probably talking about emails, and this is how it all begins. But sometimes what I also do is I'll take it up a notch. So if I know that they've also been messaging me on Instagram, I'll start connecting with them a little bit on Instagram. I'll start getting the conversation going there. So we have that relationship that's going to grow, because my thing is with a planner, and I know it's going to be different for everyone in the industry. As a wedding planner, I do take on a select number of clients, but those that I do take on, I want to make sure that we're going to be really great friends. I want to make sure that we're comfortable with each other, and I want to make sure that we also get along, that our messages are free flowing and all that. So email is one thing. I think getting that social media connection going, scoping out their social media, who are they, what do they do? And then what I've also done recently is also take it up a notch. So you were mentioning ghosting, which can happen. So sometimes what I'll do, because also it's technology, it could fail on us, it could go in their junk, and that could happen. So sometimes what I do, if it's been a few days, is I'll take out my phone and I don't call because let's be honest, no one wants to get a phone call anymore. But what I will do is because on my inquiry form, I do ask for their cell number and it is a required field, I will follow up sometimes with a text, if not on Instagram, to say, hey, so and so, I received your email and I responded back over the weekend. I hope you received it. Let me know if you have any questions. That way, you're also hitting them from a different point, but you have to be careful that you're not doing this in a pushy way. You want to do it as genuinely as possible. And again, go off of the energy as much as possible. If you don't know if it's going to be there, then don't text. It might be a little too much.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot of great information there. Yeah, so the website is really a good way to almost vet the responses that you're going to be putting out. There's really no point putting out a long, heartfelt response to someone who's only like price shopping, right? They're not really invested yet. But someone who is invested, it makes sense for you to invest the time to create a really personal response to them.
Totally. And I think this is the cost of doing business as well. And I think what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And it's not like you're going to be successful 10 out of 10 times, but I think it's also good practice. It also helps you better craft your emails and better communicate, and you're going to click. You're going to click with that one person, and I think it's interesting to see what you're doing differently that people are attracted to, and keep doing more of that.
Absolutely, yeah, I love that. Um, I kind of want to ask about, how do you go about testing those responses? How do you go about determining if something you're doing, saying in an email, for instance, is working versus not?
Mhm. Yeah, so it definitely takes years of experience and some trial and error. So how I get there is I do use my social media connections quite a bit. So I would say there are two ways. One is testing it by running some of my crazy ideas, and I have lots, by my industry friends. And I'll say, you know what, I'm thinking of throwing this line in my emails now. What do you think? If you were a client, is this too much? Is this too detailed? Is this not detailed enough? So I have conversations with my wedding industry friends and professionals. And then the other part is sometimes I actually pick at the brain of either those in the consultation. So if I feel like we have a really good energy going on in the consult, I might just ask them, I'll say, hey, by the way, I'm just curious, that email I sent you, like, do you think, was that helpful? Was that too much info? So I might probe a little bit that way to get some information. People love giving feedback. Like, there's no one that I don't think I know anyone who doesn't appreciate giving feedback, because that's, I think, in our human nature. And I also, because I do have a good relationship with pretty much all of our past clients, is I can also lean on them to say, hey, do you mind looking at this? This is something I'm thinking of sending to some of our new clients. You were a former bride or groom. What do you think? Like, what if you received this a few years ago? So I think we can use our different connections and give it time to play out. And just because you've gone through with an idea doesn't mean you have to stick with it. You can revert back or shift it.
That is a really great idea. I really love, using past clients and even current clients as like a focus group to
For
bounce ideas
sure.
off of. Yeah.
You'd be surprised. I mean, if you put it out there, and this is something I do whenever I come up with my new packages, or if I have a new website page loading, or whatever I'm about to do, I'll put it out there and people just, they love it. I mean, and right now people are looking for an excuse to fill up their time or fill up a few extra hours. And again, they love giving feedback. And sure, you could also link it to a prize or an incentive, or those who are photographers or videographers, you could also say, I'm looking for feedback. The first 20 people to give me feedback will be entered for this pool, and I will draw a winner at the end of it to win a 1-hour photo session or whatnot too. So there's definitely things that you can do to incentivize people, but I'm a bit of a brat that way. I kind of just try to use what I can and get the info while I can, and hopefully it's reciprocated and I can also give it back as well.
Yeah, I'm sure you find it that brides, you've done a great job for them and they really want to do something to help you out. I mean, they can only refer so many people to your services. So this is a great way for them to
Totally.
kind of help out. Yeah,
For
that's
sure.
brilliant.
And it's definitely a lot of fun. I do want to talk about the emails a little bit more, and then I'll
For
talk about the
sure.
consultation process, because at this point we haven't even made it to the consultation.
Yeah.
So I think it's also really important how you end the email.
Okay.
So and keep in mind, I also I come from a background of office, corporate life where there's lots of emails being sent, lots of marketing communication, and there are emails that we receive that might just be informational, and there are emails that end with a call to action. So I think it's really important that your initial inquiry email ends with a call to action for the client. So what is it that you want them to do? Do you want them to schedule time with you for a consultation? Do you want them to go watch your latest video? Do you want to just say thank you and you leave it at that? I just find if you just leave it as thank you and you close it off, then what are they supposed to do with it? Are you just feeding them information and not asking for something back? So I usually do. So there's two ways of approaching this. Some people just say, and I would love to schedule time with you. So let me know what works. I twist it a little bit and I say, here are the next steps. Let's schedule a consultation. Here's my availability. Wednesday at 2 o'clock, Friday at 5 p.m., and Saturday at 11 a.m. Which option works best for you? So do you see the difference?
Yeah.
That way, they need to ideally be prompted to choose from an option instead of just saying, I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, absolutely. A call to action, that's a great idea because, yeah, I mean, you want to make it as easy as possible for the people you're emailing to get in contact with you, to do what you want them to do. If you give them any kind of situation where they have to guess or anything like that, I mean, people are busy. They don't have time to figure out what you want them to do in your email. You have to be very concise and let them know exactly what the next steps are.
Totally. And to touch on the point about being concise, and I'm a pretty wordy, lengthy person. I think all planners are because we have details and info in our brains, but I also bullet point my emails. Instead of writing paragraphs on paragraphs, I actually add headers. So I'll add a header about our package information. I'll add a header about some venues or some options that I've thought of. I'll add a header about my availability. That way, everything in the email is just really easy to read. It's really digestible because it is a lot of info, and chances are they're reaching out to a ton of people. So if you can come across as the more, not just informative, but also as a planner, I need to come across as organized and yet thorough, but concise. So it's also very important how you construct that initial email to hopefully get you that consultation.
That's such great advice. Yeah, because yeah, exactly. If you can come across as the person who can, present the information quickly and digestibly and, in a timely manner, yeah, you're gonna be the person that stands out because they're gonna be looking at all these other emails, which are paragraphs, that it's making it more confusing than it has to be. You're the person that's going to be able to guide them through the process. Yeah.
Totally. And the one feedback I do get constantly, and again, we're not booking every inquiry either, but at least when they don't book us, at least the feedback they give us is thank you. You were so detailed. We appreciate the information and we'll be thinking of you. So sometimes we're just not in their budget and that's okay too, but at least they're thinking of us. And if they were to need to refer a friend down the road, they'll think of us. And it's happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you don't get the inquiry, I'm sure you would want it to be because you weren't within their budget or you weren't the particular style they were looking for, not because your emails were too long or they didn't know how to get in contact with you or anything like that. That's the last thing you want for sure.
Exactly. So should we talk about the consultation when we actually hopefully
Yes.
book the consultation?
Let's get into the consultation. What does that look like? Is that a phone call? Is that a voice? A video message like this? Or is that a face-to-face? How do you go about that?
Well, back in the day, I would start off with a preliminary phone call just to get the conversation going a little bit more and then schedule out the face-to-face in person. Of course, now everything is virtual, which is totally fine. And it's actually been working really well. I think I'll continue this forever. I think it's really great. When it was face-to-face, the beauty of that is that when people are showing up face-to-face, chances are they're going to be a lot more genuinely interested and you're probably part of the short list. Whereas now it is quite easy to just book in a quick 1 hour video call or phone call. It doesn't take effort out of them to leave the house. It doesn't take effort to get ready and get going. So I do understand the challenge, but because everything nowadays is virtually, I do recommend 100% it has to be video because just think of it right now. And you and I, we've had phone calls before, Victor, too, but I think just having this face-to-face interaction. There's just something more genuine, more raw and real about it. And you can also check out facial reactions. So you can see if all of a sudden you're explaining something and they've just gone blank, or you can tell they're like nervous about it. You can just pick up on body language, which is why I'm so fascinated about psychology and all that too, because all of this comes into effect when you're doing your sales and you're having your consultation, and you have to do video. Do not, if anyone's doing phone call, as soon as you read this or hear this, I need you to switch to video and take it from there.
Nice. Okay, so video 100%. So how do you have, so you've set up your video call, do you have like a checklist or something like that? Do you have a script that you go through that you run through with every client? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so I think I've been doing this for enough years that I think everything's in my head, and I'm probably a little bit jumpy at this point, but I think that's what our style of clients really appreciate, is that I don't have a script. I want to make sure that our consultations feel as natural and comfortable as possible. I don't want it to feel like I'm literally going off a checklist and checking through, because I don't want them to feel like they're just like another client or another inquiry. I want it to feel like a relationship. And for that reason, I don't usually have, I mean, I don't ever have a checklist out, but I don't usually even have notebook, or I'm not typing notes or anything, because I want to just soak it all up as if I'm about to, I mean, I haven't been on a date in ages, I'm married now, but it's as if you're meeting with a friend, you're about to meet someone for the first time at a coffee shop. You just want to talk and have a genuine conversation. You're not going to go there with a notebook and be going off a checklist of things to ask. And I think when we can remove those barriers and genuinely ask the questions, and it doesn't even have to be questions about the wedding. I think part of it is get to know them as humans, get to know them not just as a couple, but also get to know them as individuals. So then you can really better assess what type of people they are, what are they interested in. And then you can bounce off of that and say, oh my gosh, like that's so great that you guys have 2 dogs and you like to go walk your dogs at Deer Lake Park on the weekend. We adopted our dog 6 years ago, and he's not much of a walker. I usually put him in a carrier in front of my chest, but we do try to get out when we can. And that way you can build a storyline. And when they leave the consultation, they're connected with you as humans instead of just about the numbers and the budget and here's my award and here's my experience.
Right. So it's all about trying to create a real connection with the couple, not so much about just checking things off a list, proving that you know how to do your job, that sort of thing.
Totally. Now, don't get me wrong. I still do have my computer open, and because it's a video consultation and as a wedding planner, I still need to be able to show what I do, because now as a videographer, photographers, cake artists, those kind of industry vendors, they have the advantage that they have this beautiful portfolio of things that they've either designed or footage that they've shot, and they can show that, and that's literally their portfolio. As a wedding planner, yes, of course, I have my beautiful videos and footage, but I need to be able to show what I do to get me to the wedding day.
Mm.
And as part of the consultation, I do talk about the experience, but I would say my consultations typically take about an hour to hour and a half, which hour and a half is a little too long for my comfort zone. I try to wrap it up by hour 15. But typically the first 45 minutes, we're just chit-chatting. I'm getting to know them. I'm casually asking questions about their plans or lack of plans. I'm trying to also scope out their families and the dynamics and what's important to them. What do they recall from weddings that they've attended? What did they love? What do they not love? And more than anything, when I ask questions, I'll try to just take a step back or mute myself so I don't interrupt, and let them talk and talk with each other, just so you can understand what they're all about. And then as we get closer to the end of the call, I'll say, oh my gosh, you know what? There's still so much I want to share with you. So before we wrap up, I do want to just share my screen quickly. I want you guys to have a glimpse into what I do. And at that point, I've already had, before the call, prepared some of the documents I want to show them. So whether it's an insider look at what our color-coded timelines look like, or if it's an insider look at our multi-page wedding planning workbook that we have that's fill in the blank for them in Google Sheets. It could be sample floor plans in the program that I use, or it could be some photos of a wedding that we had at their venue. I have it ready to go. I'll share my screen so it's really fluid and easy. And then I'm still watching them during that call to see what are they what are they trying to squint in on to see, and what is it that they're really curious about. And that way they feel like they've had an insider look at my processes. And I do it to the point that I don't want to overwhelm them, but I want to make sure that they know what they're getting, because at that point they don't know my quote yet. They know our starting from fees, because I do send that in the initial inquiry email of what our fees start at. But I always say I have to build you a custom proposal based on the conversation that we had, based on your expectations, our capacity level, our the vendors involved, and all of that good stuff. So because of that, I want to make sure that I end the call with the overview of what we do for them, because I think it's important for them to leave the meeting and say, wow, okay, well, one, we love her because we get along and she seems really cool. And now we also understand what she actually does. And holy, that's a lot of work. Like, we need her. So then hopefully, doesn't happen always, but hopefully when they get my quote within a couple days after, and I do a formal process for that as well, but hopefully the goal is that when they receive my quote, they do appreciate it, because again, it's going to be detailed, but they also now understand why we charge what we charge.
Right. Yeah. So start with the connection and then end it with the, this is what I do, this is how I do it kind of information.
Totally. And my ratio, I would say it's 75% get to know them, get to know me, ask general questions. I treat it kind of like a mini consultation. If you want to pick up my brain for a few things, I want you to know, I want you to get to know my style and how I answer things and whatnot. Of course, I'm not giving away all the answers yet, but I want to give them a little taste. And then at the end, it's just the 25% of let's wrap it up and tie it with a nice bow and send it your way.
How do you stay in contact, and how do you manage that relationship leading up to the wedding?
So after the consultation, what I do is I do take a couple days, because the quotes that I want to be able to present, I want to be able to digest the conversation I had with the couple and be able to present them with a really thorough quote. So I understand, as a wedding planner and designer, what I prepare in my quote is going to be quite different than a photographer, videographer who might have set packages. So I do understand that process a little bit different, but I still want to make sure that I've presented them with some information and some sort of a formality, so they understand that here's my quote, here's an incentive or deadline. I think it's really important that after the consultation, you don't leave it open-ended. You're not holding their date indefinitely. They need to know that there is going to be a cutoff, and my quote is only valid until this date at this time. And sometimes if I'm feeling kind of, extra and I want to just throw in some extra bonuses for them, especially if they were a referral and I want to be able to thank them for their time, is I'll offer them an incentive. So I'll say, if you if you do book by this date, or when you book by this date, I will be happy to include, so in my case as a wedding planner, I'll include some extra access to some of our inventory, that I have some candles and basic items. So I want to give them a little bit of an incentive to book us by a date, so that we're not dragging on this process for months and months. So definitely make sure there's a deadline and that you're following up on it when the time is right, but give them time. You don't want to rush them either after the consultation, because it's a lot to digest and they need to understand that they have options and they have payment options. We definitely do split out our payments because it is quite a chunk. So we make sure that, of course, we get our deposit, retainer, whatever you want to call it, which is non-refundable. And they understand that. So they understand that that's the next step. We send them a contract, of course, and everything is electronic. So if you're not doing it electronically, make sure you are. And we're all about simplifying the process, making sure that if we do send out a contract, I'm not just sending them a PDF for them to print or figure out how to e-sign and scan back. I'm sending them a link to a program that they can actually go in and electronically sign. Because again, I want to remove any barriers, no excuses. I want to make it as easy for you to sign and pay me.
Yeah, awesome. What do you have? Maybe like a quick list of some of the programs and online tools you use to make that process, or the consultation process, generally simpler?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am a big fan of anything Google Drive related. So everything that I do is done in templates. So all of my emails for the initial consultation, I have templated in my Gmail. So I use Gmail canned responses to build out my templates, and then I add my buffer sentences at the beginning and the end of the email from there. So it looks really professionally done. So Gmail canned responses. All of my documents are in Google Drive and hosted there, which is great. And couples appreciate because they know how to access it. My consultations are always done on Zoom, and I make sure that I send them a calendar invitation with the Zoom link ready to go. I make sure the calendar invitation has an automatic reminder that emails them about a day before. It emails them to say, reminder about your meeting with Hasti tomorrow at this time. And then I have another pop-up notification about 15 minutes before to make sure they've received it. And it's important that they actually accepted the meeting, so make sure you watch for that. I won't tell you my disaster stories of when I haven't. And you have to learn the hard way, right, for some of these things. And then after the consultation, I do send them a quote. In my case, I'm not using any CRM or platforms. So I do everything. I send them a link to a PDF, which is saved in a Google Drive folder. So they just have to click into it. What else? And then from there, once they're ready to sign and do the contracting, again, I don't use a CRM. I know there are some really great ones, such as Dubsado. I know there are 17 Hats. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that my friends use. So I know there are some platforms. I do my contracts. I have it all in a Google Doc. So it's a template, of course, and then I clean it up for each client. I load that as a PDF into a program, which I believe it's free for the first 5 contracts per month. It's called DocHub, DOCHUB. I use that. It's similar to DocuSign, same concept, and that gets an email notification out to the clients. And then in terms of invoicing, I use a free accounting system called Wave, I believe, Wave or Waves, Wave Accounting, and it's free. It's amazing for sending invoices. You can see when someone's clicked into it. And you can also, if you wanted to, you could collect payment and credit card through there. I turn that feature off because it does have a bit of a charge, but you could, of course, turn it on if and when needed, and you can schedule your invoices and all that too. So I am a little bit manual in some of these parts, but there are definitely ways that I know a lot of people use systems that just workflow through, and it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great that you found a way to just do it manually, but like be organized enough to make that process not overwhelming.
Totally. And really, my advice is that it comes down to the number of clients you have per year. For those that are starting off or those that do take on a limited number of clients, they might not benefit as much from a management program that they need to pay a fee for. But I think once you're over a certain limit or certain number of clients, or once your brain capacity, you just don't want to think about checklists and workflows, you can automate it. And I think you can save a lot of time. And I think it's something I'm going to look into eventually as well.
Yeah, it does depend on volume, doesn't it? If you're only taking on maybe like 10 couples or something like that, it's manageable. But then when you're doing something like cakes or you're doing your photography, you're taking on like 30, 50 couples, it gets a bit crazy. Yeah.
For sure.
So are there any other things you want to touch on, Hasti, before we wrap up about consultations and how you run the consultations?
Yeah, I think the biggest advice I have for anyone wanting to practice with consultations is exactly that. You have to practice. It's not going to be perfect. You're only going to get better with time, and you have to allow yourself that opportunity to improve. And just know that your first one's not going to be great. Your second one's probably still not going to be great, but you have to keep practicing and having these consultations. I'm at a level now where I feel like I can even charge for my consultations. So I'll let you know how that goes, since that's brand new for me. But at the beginning, most people and majority are still offering complimentary consultations, and that's great. So I think when you're attracting the right clients and you're feeling genuine about it and comfortable, don't treat it as a sales meeting. I think that's my other advice is don't feel like you have to go into it so structured and so salesy, and just be yourself, because end of the day, you want the couple to hire you for you and not just because you're going off of a script that you found online somewhere. And I say all of this as a wedding planner because I've sat in on a number of consultations over the years, be it in person and of course recently virtually. And it's incredible. I've seen a range of consultations done by my fellow industry pros, and there are some that I cringe at, and there are some that I'm just in awe of because I'm like, can I pay you? Because that was incredible. Like, I want to hire you, and I don't even need a photographer, but I want you. So I think take the time with it, practice, and if you ever need advice, reach out. I think especially the Vancouver wedding industry market, and really throughout, I think everyone in the industry is open to sharing, and there's enough work to go around for everyone. And if someone didn't hire you, I think you should celebrate that too, because that means that it wasn't a good fit and you dodged a bullet. So it's all good.
Oh, that's great advice, Hasti. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Let my readers and the viewers of this video know where they can find you on Instagram and on the internet. What's your website, all your handles, all that kind of stuff?
So everything's pretty easy to find. Everything is either at La Vista Events or lavistaevents.com, and you can always message me. I'm all for responding and having this community that we can have and being able to lean on each other. And there might be things that you might learn from me, but I know there's tons that I can learn from each of you as well. So reach out, message me, slide into my DMs. It's always open, and I'm happy to chat.
Awesome, Hasti. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Let's do this again. This was fun.